Good morning, everybody. It's Dr. Petteruti from Intellectual Medicine here at WPRO, the voice of Southern New England. I'm here with Shannon as we kick off another great show. Our objective, as always, is to highlight the ways in which you can live younger and longer. That's our objective. That's the goal. Why should we accept aging as a passive spectator sport? There's a huge difference, ladies and gentlemen, between chronological aging, that which occurs inevitably by virtue of the calendar, and biological aging. And today, we'll be speaking to a client at Intellectual Medicine. I thought it was interesting, Shannon, how she first met us. You know, in Intellectual Medicine, we have a lot of different pathways of care, as we like to call them. We have a pathway dedicated to facial anti-aging and enhanced face appearance. Now, before you write that off as being the purview of the wealthy and the affluent and the egotistical, there are studies that correlate the appearance of your face to general well-being and happiness. There are studies that connect dysport, botulinum treatments to improved mood. There's something called the facial reflex theory. Have you ever heard of this, Shan?
I should probably say
facial response theory. It goes like this, folks. If your face looks happy, then people react to you in a more positive way. A smile, I can't say these cliches. This is a frown turned upside down. No, when your face looks projecting positive energy, happiness, people reflect that back to you. Therefore, the world responds more favorably to you. This isn't just a notion. It's a proven theory. They've done research looking at this. In fact, they've done research around botulinum treatments. You know what they found? They found that if they treat the glabella, you know those little frown lines that we tend to get right between the eyebrows, they call them the 11s, some people get, you always look angry, right? Even when you're at rest. People that get botulinum treatment for that area report improved mood, improved happiness, improved response socially. Interestingly, if you get the treatment done for the crow's feet, you don't gain the same benefit. When you smile, the crow's feet kind of crinkle, the face looks sort of cheerful.
No, I don't find it cheerful.
You don't find
it just be gone.
You want them gone. All right, so and therein, ladies and gentlemen, lies the individual variabilities that are so at play. Another detail is the texture of your skin. Now we know that we have modalities that can affect the RNA, that is the genetic code of the skin cells themselves. Photorejuvenation treatment, as practiced at Intellectual Medicine, is more than just a superficial aesthetic. It actually affects skin aging. And you ever see folks where their face looks like it's 90 and their body looks like it's 50, and there's that differential? Because their face is like the prow of a ship. So I like doing this kind of work. I like when, I don't know, when you can look in the mirror and say, wow, my face looks better than it did a year ago. It's fun to not passively age. But folks, just stay with us. We're also going to talk about idiopathic tremors, a very common disorder that afflicts people more so as they age. Our guest today is going to share her experience with idiopathic tremor. Now, whenever you hear the term idiopathic connected to a condition, that pretty much means we don't know nothing about that. Am I right? You say idiopathic.
Very true.
There's ignorance about its cause, and by extension, uncertainty about best path of treatment. Idiopathic hypertension, we don't know why it's there, it's just there. Why is it not there in other cultures, in other states, in other countries, I should say. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to give you a warning about a spread of a diarrheal illness. If you've had diarrhea, how do you know that it's not a life-threatening form of it called C. difficile? It's now afflicting 1 out of 10 people, and we're going to share with you some interesting correlations. We'll talk about coffee and its relationship to Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. And another warning, we like to keep you guys up to speed about a drug that has been associated with the life-threatening condition of the pancreas called pancreatitis, drug used in some cases in children and adolescents. So important to know about. But before we get to all that, we'd like to talk about the state of the health in general. And, you know, it's hard for an individual to exceed the health and wealth of the environment in which they're born. If you're born in Somalia, you're going to have a tough time living to be 100. It's just an unhealthy environment. If you're born in a state that is vital, that is wealthy, that is growing, your opportunities for personal advance will escalate. Rhode Island has a platform built underneath it that is surviving by virtue of its people and its beauty and its aesthetic, but that has structural calamities waiting to happen. We are 45th in the nation, according to some surveys, of business climate. By CNBC's survey, we received an F for infrastructure and an F for business regulatory burden. Add to that a budget this year that is going to increase by increased taxes to the rate of $500 million, 500 million added money. Among the things that the money is targeted for are no student hungry. I love these titles that are just full of unicorns and rainbows, right? Who's in favor of hungry students? Raise your hand. Nobody. They'll starve the little boogers. I don't care. Nobody's in favor of that. So what's the remedy? They want to feed kids breakfast at school, all the kids in the school, in poverty schools, so nobody gets stigmatized. They all get breakfast right there at their desk as school begins. Now, folks, I don't want hungry kids, but can you imagine little Junior going to school as mom is sitting there eating her bagel and oatmeal and saying to the kid, sorry, no food for you, go to school? Absolutely not. Behind every hungry child is a hungry parent or guardian. Either that or they're incompetent or negligent. In either circumstance, help needs to be directed at the home. Stop treating the superficial consequence, which is a kid complaining about being hungry. So now the kid's eating breakfast at the table. Picture 30 kids munching on whatever food they're giving them. Crumbs everywhere. They're hiding the food in the desk. I talked to a teacher where this policy's in place. Pestilence is riveting the school. Mice everywhere, rats everywhere, because who's cleaning up after the kids? Is there money in the budget? Are they standardizing this new restaurant, if you will, to the same level of other food distributing establishments? It's ridiculous. Feed the kid at home. Empower the families. The state creeps in, and now they're telling your kid what to eat. Suppose you're kosher. Suppose you're gluten-free. Suppose you're peanut allergy. I want to be in charge of my child's food, not the state. If there's money to be distributed, give it to the people. Don't squander it spreading crumbs and pestilence and imposing more burdens on these poor teachers. What's next? Let's give them all toothbrushes and toothpaste so they can brush their teeth after they eat. What's next? You know, you can't send them home hungry. Make the teachers have pasta dinner before they... Come on, people. There are problems out there, but the solution is not more and more state control of your life. Look at it. It happens incrementally. The ending is bad. Poverty rate in Rhode Island is 12.5%. We're number one in New England. Yay us. If you took the money and redistributed it to those families, you could give every poverty-stricken family in Rhode Island an extra $100 a year. That's going to buy, I did the math on this, Shannon, that'll buy 360 eggs or more. That's a good start. And when we come back, folks, we're going to be talking with Deb. We're going to be shifting from hungry children and the need to help them to how we can keep you vital and young. And how about that tremor? What causes it? What can be done about it? And does that connect to brain health more generally? I'm Dr. Steve Petteruti. This is Intellectual Medicine. We'll be right back. Yeah, it drives me nuts. It drives me nuts. It's creeping socialism, folks. You start out giving a kid, you know, a free lunch. Okay, they're in school anyhow. I get that. Now breakfast? Really? Where? In the classroom? Where there's no standards of hygiene? Where the crumbs are scrambled all over the place? Where the teachers are now having to teach over the wrapping paper being torn apart? And what exactly are they giving them? I'm getting a signal here from Tyler. Hey, Tyler.
Hiring a qualified data engineer felt like a second job. More job seekers use Indeed than any other site.
Okay.
So there's no better place.
He's dialing in. So it's, you know, the idea here is to look beyond the headlines. So they want to spend $3.3 million on this program.
I was just letting you know this is a really short commercial break.
$50 credit to give your first
Do we have Deb up?
at Indeed.com/credit. Terms and conditions, quality standards, and
3.3 million.
3.3 million. 300,000 of state money with another 3 million of federal money in order to give kids what, granola bars at their desk? Come on, people. We can do better. And another $500 million we're going to tax our way into prosperity in Rhode Island. And new burdens on the business community. Do you know now if you have somebody on Medicaid and you employ them, you've got to pay an extra tax to subsidize the health care they're otherwise getting?
Oh my God.
Now back to intellectual medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
So I'm back. This is Dr. Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine on the voice of Southern New England, WPRO. I'm here with Shannon and with Tyler on a beautiful, beautiful morning in January, where we are focusing on you, on your health, and on your longevity. You know, people define their priorities very differently. In the world of intellectual medicine, in the world of complementary care, I think one of the most important things we can do for folks is discriminate what to apply and what not to apply. You know, there are so many things you guys read about, and God bless you for the research you do online. I heartily support that. We're going to talk about physician burnout. Did you know, Shan, between 50 and 75% of doctors are burned out at any given time, and that they have a much higher probability of making a clinical error and they lose their empathy. Now think about that. Half of the doctors are burned out and somebody's got an appointment with them on Monday. It's like, doctor, maybe you should ask them, how are you feeling today? Are you feeling cared for? And one of the number one causes of burnout is the computer interface. The computer has become the third eye in the room. It's the government watching you. It's the insurance company watching you. The intrusion and the corrosion of doctor-patient freedom. It's terrible. But we break away from that in intellectual medicine, and we welcome to the show Deborah, welcome to Intellectual Medicine. Good morning. Well, thanks for taking the time to speak with us. Are those horses all taken care of, Deb? Did you get to that task already? Oh, what a guy. So I know we're going to be talking about your tremor and about the experience you've had in the course of being in intellectual medicine, but give our listeners just a snapshot about your physical life. I was very impressed. You do more than just kind of hang out there. Tell us about what's it like taking care of that farm?
Well, you know, it's not very big, but one horse. I got to clean the corral. I do about every other day. You know, my husband helps out a lot too with the real heavy stuff.
Yeah.
We have 11 chickens, and you know, especially this weather.
Yep.
You got to make sure the water is freezing, and or the hose is frozen. You have to put that away.
It's
Kind of like the way we do it. It's just normal things.
Yep.
You don't know anything about very small farming. And there's more stuff.
That's exciting. I really admire your lifestyle, and I admire your passion to live young. So, refresh my memory. How did we first meet?
I had a friend who had an IPL,
Yep.
and
Now, Deb, for our listening audience, IPL, folks, that's intense pulse light. It's a form of photorejuvenation. We're talking with Deb, who first came to intellectual medicine, looking at some facial anti-aging. And how did that treatment work out for you?
very well. I had some spots that disappeared, and I just had one this week, so it's been years I guess now, and I didn't get hardly anything came off my face compared to the first time. The first time I went, whoa. I had so much gunk on my face,
That's,
and I could get rid of it.
yeah, it's exciting. You know, when we look at our face, one of the first things we all do every morning, we see evolutionary changes from time. It's nice to do something so gentle, and so I'm going to call this physiologic in the sense that it's using your own body's healing to make the skin better. But how did you go from us addressing facial anti-aging to the next thing you know, we're doing intravenous chelation and talking about the tremor? Tell us a little bit about how that tremor began and how it was affecting you.
Well, it started out
Right.
And then it got worse and worse and worse, where, I'd go out with a friend and they'd say, boy, you're really shaking today. Work was going back and forth, whatever. And then I got a camera and I couldn't just hold the camera without shaking. It drives me insane. So I connected to my primary.
Yep.
And they said, we'll see. We don't think it's Alzheimer's or something, so we'll just get work, which it was.
Right.
And so I went to you, and you suggested doing heavy metal tests.
Right. So that tremor, Deb, just for our audience that can't quite hear everything that you say, began gradually, started to become imposing on your life such that other people noticed it. So it became a social concern. And you're telling me even holding a teacup became a challenging act. And holding your camera, you weren't able to take photographs because the tremor was interfering with your ability to steady your hand and take a picture. And folks, this is really common. These tremors you see often, and when they occur, unfortunately, there is no treatment out there that is terribly effective. The drugs have side effects, they work poorly, and none of them are capable of addressing possible causes of that tremor. Now, I have to say, Deb, that nobody, including intellectual medicine, actually knows exactly what causes the tremor. The reason that I suggested heavy metal testing is because we know heavy metals like lead are direct neurotoxins. They're poison. They're poison to the nervous system, peripheral and central. So we took a look at that, and I have those initial results in front of me. I know we did a series of 2 heavy metal tests. The first one, Deb, was done in March of 17, and the second one in February of 18. And after a series of intravenous chelation therapy, your lead level dropped by 32%, and your mercury level, another neurotoxin, dropped by 42%. Now, those numbers are exciting, but what really matters is you. Now, untreated, tremors get worse. I in my clinical experience, have never seen anybody with a tremor, idiopathic tremor like yours, that just magically or spontaneously got better. I don't know, Shannon, have you borne witness to that in your career as a nurse practitioner?
No.
Yeah, I don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's tough. These poor doctors, they're also jammed up, as we mentioned before, Deb, with computer mandates and things that they have to do. What do you do when there's no treatment for there's no drug for what you got? You just kind of hope it doesn't get worse. Anyhow, there we were, the tremors there. We talked about the lead. And at that point, decided to do the IV chelation. How's that experience actually coming into the center, having the IV administered? Is it painful? How do you feel?
Well, I'm not a big needle lover.
Yep.
And Tammy is awesome.
Yeah.
I've had blood run before, and I always thought it was smooth and very thin skin.
Yeah.
Veins, the whole bit. Nothing. I don't even feel the needle going in.
Yeah, she's brilliant. Tammy is our nurse. She runs our drip bar at Intellectual Medicine. How about while it's dripping?
I usually bring a book and I read and just sit there. A lounger.
Yeah.
You guys have blankets. You don't get cold.
Yeah.
It's very nice. It's a very relaxing experience.
That's it makes me want to sign up, Shannon. Actually, I just did one last night, chelation. Now, tell us about the tremor now.
I would put it at 75% better.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, I in the morning, you get a little shaky, but anyway,
Yeah.
a couple hours.
That's,
And I don't see you again for a while.
that's encouraging.
Very random.
Now, how are you doing with teacups, with forks? Has there been a change in your functional capacity?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I don't need a tripod or a monopod anymore. We're taking pictures most of the time. And I know, originally I feel like I can stop this. I can stop my hands from shaking.
Right. So it was sort of by mental will. When the tremor begins, it's terrifying for many people, Deb, because it is a leading front of neurologic degeneration, and nobody knows what comes next. There's not a doctor in the world who can look at you dead in the eye and say to you, I guarantee this will never be Parkinson's, or that this is not the beginning of it. What it is a degradation of the nervous system on some level. What actually causes it? It may turn out that it's multiple variables, because we did other things together in the course of this time. I thought chelation was really fundamental, and it's been our experience with others that there's a correlation between chelation, getting out toxic heavy metals, and neurologic improvement. There are case studies in the literature, Shannon, correlating chelation therapy with improvement in multiple sclerosis, or MS, another neurodegenerative condition that we do not know the etiology of. One thing we know, Deb, just about every neurodegenerative condition from Alzheimer's to Parkinson's to MS has a component of neuroinflammation or free radical assault on the brain. Neutralizing those free radicals, we feel, is an important element in creating an environment that will keep the brain enriched. One thing that I heartily disagree with is when any degenerative symptom is associated with your age. That is the equivalent of waving a white flag. If they say, well, you've got a little tremor, but you are, Deb, you and I, right? We're approaching 60. This is the big year for a very exciting year, I think. So you went on, and we're doing now some hormonal therapies. And how's that affected you? Tell me how you're feeling in the context of the hormone part of your treatment.
Well, one of the things that was really bothering me in what started in my late 40s was sweating, hot
Right.
flashes, being very warm in the middle of the night, waking up all sweaty, and people would have them coat on, and I'm like got a light sweater on, but it's totally warm.
Yep.
And it's debilitating. I mean,
Wow.
and so many, most women go through it.
Yep.
So anybody that's listening,
They know those hot flashes are more than just a minor nuisance. They use the word debilitating. And did you know that there is a correlation in a recent study between the magnitude of hot flashes and the future risk for dementing illness? And there are studies correlating hormonal deprivation and decline in hormone levels with higher rates of dementia. On top of that, there are studies correlating higher levels of lead with decreased cognitive function. You start to link these things together. Now here comes a little tremor, and it gets a little bit unsettling when we think of our future if that's starting to occur. But how are you feeling now? You're going to be 20 years from now. You're still going to be riding horses?
we'll see about that. I'm going to take care of them. I'm not sure if I'll be ready.
Well, listen, I'm going to put my vote that you'll be riding them, and our objective at Intellectual Medicine is to keep people doing what they love for as long as they can. Deb, it's been great. Thanks for being on the show and sharing your story. I know many listeners are taking notes and are relating to what you have said. I think you're going to help a lot of people by sharing your story. Thank you.
Thank you for your help.
Oh, you bet, Deb. She's great. That's Deb and her benefit from trade. But next up, from Revolution Softwash News Center, it's Doug Lissette. Morning, Doug.
WPRO News.
Nice job, Tyler.
Man killed in
Nice job, Tyler.
ago.
Um,
Single car crash.
So that was the story of Deb. For those of you that were not able to hear, she's 60 or soon to be 60. Patient of ours. She actually came to us just looking for facial anti-aging, something that we do all the time and we do very well. And she had a wonderful result with that. And it was interesting to me that when you start to help people in an area of their primary concern, their level of confidence and their willingness to engage goes up. And so too for Deb, that she trusted us to guide her through facial anti-aging. She then discussed with us her issue with tremor, which made me want to do a heavy metal test for her to see how much lead was in her system. Her lead level was significant. The problem with testing for lead is we don't know what level of that poison is going to cause your problem. We know it's a pure toxin and that any lead can be a problem. Unfortunately, the thing that we didn't mention with regard to Deb is that she had no exposure history. She doesn't go to the shooting range. She didn't work in a factory. She wasn't in the jewelry industry. She wasn't in the heating and air conditioning industry. She was just an average person. Well, in our age bracket, I'm 60, soon to be. In our age bracket, we had lead in paint. We had lead in gasoline. There's lead in the soil. It's in the air. It's a polluted world. And we absorb that lead. It goes into our bones and it goes into our cells. The study I referenced was looking at, from the VA, looked at veterans who had high lead levels in their bone. And each quartile of increasing lead in the bone led to decreasing cognitive function. Their memory, their IQ, all measured parameters of cognitive function went down. Now in the chelation world, look, nerves heal slowly, so it can take a while. Deb's been with us now for a couple of years. And that tremor getting better, no drug involved, it's kind of exciting stuff. So that's what we need. And then we got to revive the economy of Rhode Island and the country. So good news, the government's opened up again. I'm interested that it took 6 months for us to notice that we shut. It's like, right through, I mean, 60 days, not 6 months.
Like 6 months.
It took a while. It's not good to shut the government. It's a bad idea. You know, they weren't paying the Coast Guard. That's really bad. If a guy is holding a gun for a living and you don't pay him, you know, the barbarians will be at the gates.
I know. I do.
Oh, yeah.
How can we check our lead levels?
Well, how do you check lead levels? I should talk about this on air as well. You should check it in the blood, and the reason is to determine if you're getting daily exposure. However, blood's not adequate. That only will give you a reflection on the exposure you've had in the last several days. The best way to check it, in our view, is through provocative urine testing. That means you're given an IV infusion of calcium EDTA. It's FDA approved for removing lead. It binds to the lead that's hiding in your bones and your cells and pulls it into the bloodstream where it can filter out through the urine. So we test what comes out in the urine. And that gives us an idea about the total body store of lead. Then we can decide, based upon symptom, age, and magnitude of lead, what regimen we should apply to help get the lead out. So what clinical things make us want to remove lead? You know, we'll talk about that when I go back on air in another minute, just so the whole audience gets to hear. At Intellectual Medicine, you can schedule a provocative heavy lead test without necessarily scheduling an appointment with the doctor. I don't know why you would want to not see the doctor or the nurse practitioner. She's fantastic, but it's your prerogative, just so that you know where those lead levels are. Furthermore, we can validate benefit by virtue of not only looking at how you feel, but by measuring those levels in a follow-up study. We have a strong philosophy at Intellectual Medicine that everybody should be hormonally repleted, and we all should be doing things to lower heavy metal toxic levels in our body. Unfortunately, it's a polluted world. And I thought it was interesting, Shannon, that Cranston put a moratorium on solar power. But Burrillville can't put a moratorium on fossil fuel power, right? Why does a local community have control in one circumstance but not in the other? Isn't this just a fuel bias, nothing more? And they're putting in a fossil fuel plant that's going to increase the carcinogens, lead, poison, destroy the forest, you know, versus solar. I mean, how many pollutants does solar emit? Not a ton.
Is it a visual? What is their
Well, you know, people don't want to live next door to it, so yes, it's an aesthetic. Anyhow. So the Patriots are coming up, in a week. We're playing, who are we playing? Los Angeles. Yeah, that's a game we're going to win. Our defense is so good right now that I don't think Goff is as good. That Kansas City was the best offense we've seen in the last 5 years. We're going to find a way to bottle up Los Angeles. Going to be fun to watch. But we're here for you if they lose. We're here with antidepressants.
Back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
Hey gang, we are back. It's Dr. Petteruti along with Shannon and Tyler. We are the voice of Southern New England at WPRO. We are Intellectual Medicine. We are the voice for your freedom of choice when it comes to your health care. Remember, you do not have health insurance. Remember, it is not a health care system. You have sick insurance, and it is a sick care intervention system. Deb, our guest earlier on the show, a 59-year-old with a tremor that has improved to the point where she once had trouble operating her camera, was having trouble drinking from a teacup or eating with a fork, is now having all those lifestyle impositions reversed after a series of chelation therapies targeted to remove toxic heavy metals. Deb, ladies and gentlemen, was not sick. She did not have a disease. She was not classically unwell. She got a clean bill of health from her primary care doctor. Now, orthodox medicine is important, has a vital role, and is populated with empathic and well-meaning individuals. However, at its worst, it is a paranoid, insecure cartel full of people that are threatened on every side. One of the ways they're threatened is by the knowledge that their patients acquire on their own. You want to test this theory? You want to test your doctor's ego? Do some research on your medical condition and then bring it up at your next appointment. See how that goes. If the doctor rears up like a horse seeing a snake and says to you, stop reading internet garbage, well, that's a problem because you have abandoned the opportunity to have an intellectual exchange of information. Now, you know how much time a doctor has with their patient, Shan? It's like 7 minutes or less. 7 minutes or less. Why? Because incrementally, we have corroded the freedom of that doctor to talk to you. How does it get corroded? Number one, certain topics are literally banned. Doctors are muffled. If you talk about the wrong thing in the context of that appointment, you can be harmed. You can be harmed by the bureaucracy that leans on doctors and makes their life semi-miserable. You can be harmed by insurance companies. If you're in a clinical encounter and you start to discuss treatments or remedies or philosophies of care that the dogma does not embrace, your encounter can be disallowed by insurance companies and they can ask for the money back from the doctor who has the audacity to color outside of the lines. Furthermore, and I have to go back to this, Shannon, I know I talk about it a lot, it's absurd. So I got a formal reprimand because I ordered too many labs on a patient that I was evaluating for morbid obesity. Me, too many labs. Are you kidding me? Board certified in obesity medicine. I went to the Department of Health. You know what they have on their website addressing obesity? You know what they have, folks? Drink skim milk. That's the advice. Meantime, somebody tell the Department of Health that 1950s wants their medicine back. They're running around like the Keystone Cops chasing chickenpox viruses when the state is suffering from an epidemic of obesity, and I get reprimanded. Oh, it drives me nuts. My point about all this, it's a way that they take away freedom. How many doctors are going to be comfortable ordering labs to assess obesity when I had to pay a fine because you know what? It reminds me, remember that movie Amadeus when he talks to Joseph II, the emperor of Austria, and he says to Mozart, too many notes. He said, well, sire, what notes do you want me to remove? You know, they said too many labs to me. They didn't tell me what labs they want me to remove, Shannon.
They didn't know what half of them meant.
And every single lab, every single one of them got validated by the AMA's expert who wrote the position paper on obesity. It drives me crazy. Facts don't matter when the cartel has crafted an opinion and they're feeling threatened by facts that they themselves didn't create nor possess. So I guarantee you that right now somebody's there raising an eyebrow saying, really? Chelation therapy for tremor? I don't do that. Well, of course you don't do it. We're the only ones doing it. Well, in this area. In this area. We're not alone. Throughout the nation, this is common. So let me emphasize, ladies and gentlemen, there is no FDA-proven effect. Chelation, intravenous chelation therapy is not FDA approved to treat tremor, nor any other known medical condition. However, there are abundant studies correlating chelation therapy with improved outcomes in patients with heart disease, improved outcomes in case studies in people with neurologic conditions. Because these conditions are so complex and multifaceted, we have to look at them in 3 dimensions. Anybody that tells you there's one key ingredient that's going to reverse aging dynamic is incorrect. Everybody ages at a different pace with a different lead symptom. My dad always said it, he's a family doc. If you're destined to die by the knife, you don't fear the gun. So part of our job at intellectual medicine is to discriminate. Where is your greatest risk? Now, in Deb's case, she had a clear and present threat to her health, and it was neurologic decay. That tremor doesn't get better. It progresses. It goes from a little teacup to I can't hold my fork, to I'm embarrassed to go out publicly, to who knows what comes next. Neurological decay happens slowly over decades. Look at traumatic brain encephalopathy. It does not happen right away. You get conked in the head as a 30-year-old football player, you're fine until decades later. My point is that you've got to look at these issues biologically as what causes them. Now, we know lead. Somebody asked a moment ago, how should I test for my lead? Simple answer, provocative study, test in the urine. Provocative means an IV infusion of calcium EDTA. And you heard Deb talk about how brilliant Tammy is at that and how painless this can be. That pulls heavy metals out of the cells of the bone. Heavy metal like lead doesn't float around in your blood. It goes in, buries itself in the bones and in the cells of your body. You got to pull it out first, then measure what comes out of the urine. After that, based on symptoms, age, and magnitude of lead, we can craft an approach. The lead took decades to get there. It takes a little time to get rid of it. Deb's lead went down 32%. Her mercury went down 42%. Her tremor improved 75%. She said to me off air, I just feel younger. I just feel better. And we talked about all those perimenopausal symptoms that she obliterated with her hormone replacement therapy. The missing ingredient for women, it's testosterone. How many times are women contemplating? You know, when we do testosterone testing, the Orthodox lab puts as their normal range a low end of 0. They consider no testosterone to be within the normal limits for a woman. You know what that tells us? They have no idea what testosterone should be when it's really driven clinically. So tremor and heavy metal, there's a strong association. Shan, we need to warn our listeners about this drug that can damage the pancreas. It's used for people with irritable bowel syndrome and inflammatory bowel disease. Inflammatory bowel disease has other approaches that can be addressed we'll talk about. And while we're talking about the colon, we'll talk about a common food additive that can increase your risk of having a potentially fatal form of diarrhea known as Clostridium. We'll talk about that when we come back. In coffee, can it help prevent Alzheimer's? We'll have more when we come back. This is Dr. Steve Petteruti. You're listening to Intellectual Medicine. Whoa.
Interested in flipping 5 to 6 houses this year to supplement your income? Then Nick Vertucci has an
Wow, there you go. 0 sugar recipes. That's good. So we'll talk about it when we come back on air. But the Clostridium difficile was a toxin. It was first identified back in the 70s. And I remember when it first became an issue, we were finding it in hospitals and the infirm individuals that they would develop hospital-acquired diarrhea. And it was an overgrowth of this bacteria, Clostridium difficile, that could progress to death. In the hospital, we had trouble getting rid of it. Remember that, Shannon? It's still out there. It's not like remember when. What occurred, and it was around the year 2000, was a sudden surge in young, healthy people getting C. diff, not in the hospital, but out in the community, to the point where it's now estimated that 1 out of 10 cases of diarrhea from Clostridium. That's a little scary. So we're going to talk about approaches to that, why that's happening. This one is so, I love it when they do studies that are like obvious. We're going to do a study to see if the sun comes up every morning. They did a study to look at factors that affect longevity. And they concluded that staying fit and exercising helps your longevity. Gee, eureka, huh? Stop the presses. They also found, I don't know, this one's a little bit, I don't think this makes any sense at all to me, Shannon, that women 5'9" or taller had a better chance of living to 90. That's what this, yeah, 5'9" or long. I wonder if that means if you get like leg extensions.
Right.
How about if you wear heels?
Right.
Well, you have to be careful because these are observational studies. Now, you could argue that the population of women that are shorter might include people with some genetic issues that cause them to not be as tall, that can affect other aspects of their health. So that's a possibility. So I would say write that one off because ain't nothing you can do about it anyhow, folks. Trust me, I've tried. I've tried to get taller, but it just doesn't happen. The weight issue was certainly quite relevant, and it was more relevant for women than for men in the study. What they found regarding physical activity, and physical activity, by the way, it included things like what Deb does, like caring for horses in a barn, gardening, walking dogs. All these things count. You can check the box if you take your pit bull for a 30-minute walk every day. Oh, you don't have a pit bull? Do you want one?
No. Poor
No,
Mandy.
Mandy. Mandy's part of our family. We love Mandy. Oh, boy. Anyhow, 30 minutes a day was a threshold level of exercise that increased by 35% your chance of getting to 90. Well, we say 90 is a nice start, but let's aim for like 100. And then let's go beyond. Why not go beyond? So, fun facts about lead. In 1986, it was banned in water pipes throughout the municipal systems. 1986. If you live in the Northeast, your water system was probably built in the 1800s. What do you think they built it out of, folks? That water is miles long, hundreds of miles those pipes are. Lead-free faucets, you can buy those now, Shan? They're allowed to have 7% lead in them. That's how they define lead-free. There's lead in lipstick, makeup, and it doesn't have to be listed unless you specifically get lead-free makeup. I wonder if that's why women have more dementia than men.
There's nothing small about your business. Your passion, your hours, your reputation, it's all huge.
Yeah, every month I do a chelation therapy. Why? Why not? I know that lead's toxic. I know that it corrodes brains and hearts. Lead has been associated with 250,000 deaths per year, 10 seconds, from cardiovascular disease alone.
Now back to Intellectual Medicine with Dr. Petteruti. Call in now at 438-WPRO or 1-800-321-WPRO.
Hey gang, I'm back. It's Dr. Steve Petteruti here at Intellectual Medicine on WPRO, the intellectual voice of Southern New England, along with Shannon and with Tyler. Shannon, when you were a nurse practitioner, I'm guessing they didn't teach you much about lead, did they?
No.
Yeah, no, me neither.
Nothing.
You know what else they didn't teach me about? Nutrition. Now, last week we had on Dr. Ray Miss, Dr. Fiber. He has manufactured an ice cream. This is remarkable. A physician manufacturing ice cream. Why? Because he saw an opportunity to improve the health of young people, especially by incorporating the prebiotic inulin, I-N-U-L-I-N, into his ice cream. I think it's brilliant. What's the name of his ice cream? Do you remember?
Seriously good?
Yeah, you're right. Seriously Good Ice Cream by Dr. Ray Miss. It's available at Dave's Marketplace and at Whole Foods. You look for it. I found it in Dave's in the middle of the ice cream. You got to look up top. It's made out of fantastic, healthy stuff. Yes, we get nothing from this other than pointing you toward good health. We have no sponsors. We take nothing. We charge nothing when we have guests. We're here for you. We're here to be your honest broker of things that keep you young and healthy. And some of those things are avoiding drugs whenever you can. What drugs should you avoid? Well, there's a common drug used for pain. It's called pregabalin. The trade name is Lyrica. And we keep talking about this drug because it's, in our view, overprescribed, overvalued, and harmful. They did a study, Shannon, looking at it for folks that had operative pain, and they found, number one, it had no benefit for pain. Number two, it caused cognitive impairment. So I'm going to give you a drug after you have surgery. It won't help your pain. It'll make your brain scumbuddy, right? Don't mark me present for that one. And oh, by the way, it causes obesity. That's terrible. Don't want any part of it. So another issue, well, we talked about is lead, right? How to measure it. We did talk about that. Should I mention that again, or we covered that, Shan?
I think we covered that.
We got that covered. Thank you. So that's good. If they do a blood test and they don't find lead and they tell you you're fine, that's not true. The lead in the blood is only there for a couple of days and it goes in your bones. So you got to go beyond that. Now, Clostridium difficile is an infection of the colon that causes profound watery diarrhea. It can be life-threatening. It can be a cause of death. In the year 2011, when I last saw stats for this, 30,000 people died from C. difficile infection. Now, it was maybe 15 years ago or so that I noted this becoming prominent. It started to become an issue in hospitals. They found it was pervasive, that it was happening to old and infirm, weakened people. Now, it turns out Clostridium difficile, or C. diff as it's abbreviated, normally resides in your colon. It belongs there in balance. But when they give people antibiotics, it wipes out the normal bacteria and allows C. difficile to overpopulate the colon, creating this imbalance. In the hospital, it can lead to death. What's happened, and this happened around the year 2000, Shan, all of a sudden it's showing up in the community. We're talking healthy young people with profuse watery diarrhea, cramping, showing up with Clostridium, C. diff. Now, how do you prevent it? How do you treat it? Well, one way to prevent it, and that's why I talked about Seriously Good ice cream, is to make sure you're not feeding the C. diff the stuff it loves. And what does it love? It loves crap food. It loves carbohydrate-rich junk. And it loves the supplement Trehalose, Trehalose. It's an artificially manufactured sugar additive that's been put in food around the year 2000. It was FDA approved as a food additive in the year 2000. And that corresponds to an upswing in community-acquired C. difficile. It turns out that C. diff love Trehalose. They suck it up like 100 times. It's like superfood for C. diff. They go nuts on the stuff. So now let's make a perfect combination. You're an average American eating an average American diet. You don't read the ingredient label. You're sucking down Trehalose. You go to the doctor because you have a sinus infection. He gives you an antibiotic which wipes out the healthy bacteria. You continue to feed the C. diff. The next thing you know, you've got a diarrheal illness. If you're not careful, they might give you another antibiotic to try to help fix it. Stop. If you have profuse watery diarrhea, there is a test that can be done to determine if the toxin from C. diff is causing it. Now, in our world, we heartily, strongly, ambitiously advocate that when you go on an antibiotic, you take a super high dose of a provenly vital probiotic. Unfortunately, most over-the-counter probiotics are dead on arrival and don't have enough colony counts. So whenever we put someone on an antibiotic at Intellectual Medicine, we recommend a probiotic of over 200 billion units, colony counts. Read the label. The label on the bottle at the store is the amount of colonies when you purchase when the product was made. They slowly die off. So depending on how long it's been on the shelf will affect the colony count. And no, you cannot eat yogurt and expect that to be the remedy in the case of someone on high-dose antibiotics. Now, can you acquire a healthy bacterial balance in your gut by virtue of feeding it properly? Absolutely. And it starts, ladies and gentlemen, with getting off of the average American diet and eating those healthy things you're taught about, from vegetables to high fiber. So whenever there's an antibiotic, remember your probiotic. And if you do develop profuse watery diarrhea, remember 1 out of 10 cases can be related to C. diff. Now these spores that the C. diff makes can survive outside of the body for weeks at a time and are really, really, really hard to kill. That's why a cursory cleaning of the bathroom is inadequate, and that's why it spreads. You know, in the hospital when somebody has this, remember going in their room, Shannon?
Oh, gowned and huge.
Huge.
Deal.
They had a separate room. You had a gown, glove, and you had to strip down all of that gear before you left the room.
Oh, and if you forgot something, you had to go back out. You had to regown.
Yep, and you had to wash with soap and water, right? Because the other stuff, the Purell, didn't kill it. So the point here is be mindful of this and try to avoid antibiotics, right? See if you can delay the antibiotics. Tell your doctor you don't want them unless they're most critical. Sometimes the best approach is to let your immune system do the job for you. And we have at Intellectual Medicine at our drip bar infusions that are intended to support immune function that are very, very safe to use because how many infusions have we done, estimate, ballpark?
Oh, 15,000?
15 to 20,000. And how many complications, severe complications?
0.
Not one. So 15 to, if you're thinking, oh my goodness, these are IVs, 15 to 20,000. And, you know, knock on wood, look, this is an IV, it's a medical procedure. Our nurse Tammy is very conscientious. Everything we do at Intellectual Medicine is built with your safety as a primary objective. We've had 0 infections. That's incredible. The most dangerous thing about getting your IV is driving to the center. So drive carefully. Now, other thing, pancreatitis. The drug is azathioprine, also known as Imuran. It is an immunosuppressive drug, sometimes known as biologicals, intended to suppress your immune system so it can allow some autoimmune diseases like inflammatory bowel disease to get better. Hey, wait, stop the presses, people. We're blocking the immune system so that we can help improve an autoimmune disease? Well, what's causing the autoimmunity and what bad things can happen when you block my immune system? It's not a shock that one of the labeled warnings is an increased risk of life-threatening infection and cancer. That's hardly a bargain, folks. And now, to make things even worse, the drug's associated with an increased risk of pancreatitis. Stop the madness. Well, you know what? We are here to help you every week avoid the toxic effect of some elements of orthodox medicine while we embrace our like-minded colleagues in their pursuit of your better health. We define health as freedom to choose how you want to live and the freedom to choose to live younger. I am Dr. Steve Petteruti along with Shannon and Tyler. We're signing off. We will see you next week, but we are wishing you 120 youthful years. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. Remember, avoid antibiotics, get your chelation every month, and we'll be here next week.